well, no shit, Sherlock, I'm here, right? It's one of those moments, right? So I always ask people, take this to the next level. And when I went to buy my car, I actually did not go to buy the car. I kid you not, Carl. This guy walked up and he said to me, "That's an ugly car, isn't it, sir?" And I looked up in surprise because that is what I call a pattern break. And what is interesting about this is that that pattern break made me trust this person for some weird reason. So just think about it, because I suddenly realized that he's not selling, he's having a conversation. And when you're having a conversation, that pressure just goes off, because you walked into dealership and all I want to do is just admire the new BMWs. And unfortunately, I had my wife with me, and she is a huge skeptic of expensive cars.
Your business's success depends on relationships, relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Carl Ponto. Each week, I bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Deepak Bhootra. He is a leadership coach, author, and entrepreneur with over 30 years of global corporate leadership experience. He has coached more than 1,500 professionals, helping them navigate career growth, workplace dynamics, and leadership challenges. He is the founder of Rise Up at Work, a platform designed to help professionals grow after they get hired. His work combines coaching frameworks, community learning, and AI-powered tools to help individuals build clarity, confidence, and long-term career success. He is also the author of several books on career development and leadership, including Rise Up, Your Career Reclaimed. Congrats on Rise Up at Work, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Carl. Looking forward to this conversation, sir.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on the show because in the market today, there's so many options the companies have for vendors out there. The market is overloaded with a lot of vendors that look about the same and offer similar services at similar pricing, and it's really hard to tell them apart. And so it seems to me, and what I'm excited to have you on the show to talk about, is the ways that companies can elevate their offers from being another vendor to becoming trusted advisors for their clients, and how that changes the game when it comes to retention and differentiating oneself in the market and those sort of things. So what do you see are the ways for companies to go about transitioning from another vendor into a trusted advisor for their clients?
This is the $1,000,000 question, right, Carl? We've been, I think, 50 years, 60 years of selling. And to be honest with you, you spoke about, human to human, right? At the end of the day, selling is a human to human effort, right? So for me, my granddad used to call B2B as belly to belly. And that was actually something that gave me a very big hint about transactional selling versus advisory relationships, right? When you are solving for a specific request and you just answer a specific request and you're not thinking long-term, that's when you are what I call a vendor. A vendor moves from moment to moment. Trusted advisors, on the other hand, are moving from, I would put it this way, outcome to outcome. They're always long-term focused. They take short-term reactions in stride. And to be honest with you, Carl, the best way I can put it is that vendors, if you want to be a vendor, just check how many times you're in reactive mode. But if you are an advisor, you're most likely in diagnose and proactive mode. You are actually having a conversation to lead your customer to a certain direction. And I think the difference is one sells and one actually serves. That's how I would tell people to start looking at. And the best way to do that is to just kind of make believe it or not, Carl, it's actually just make a list. How many times did you ask open-ended questions? How many times did you understand the pain? How many times did you try to think about your quota attainment versus satisfying the customer and solving a problem? If you cannot see those ratios shifting, then I assure you, you will be easily able to label yourself whether you're a vendor or you're a trusted advisor.
Yeah, the difference in mindset and the difference of the interactions and the questions are very telling. And it's something that you can also reflect in the initial, everything from just like the marketing and sales process and experiences that the clients go through as they're getting acquainted before they buy it, and then especially afterwards, those like ongoing client success management interactions, all of that. If the company is coming from this standpoint of we're just trying to sell or close deals, it's very transactional, then it has a much different experience for the client side, and they can feel there's that, that you don't really have their best interest in mind, that there's that kind of line item feeling that they get. And And with how many options are out there, it's really easy for them to look for something else or find a better deal somewhere else because they're not getting that deeper level of connection or that sense that you actually really care about them at all. And so it's interesting how you said about going from the reactive to the proactive side. And so is one of the big mindset shifts. And so it's being able to look forward and understand. But I think one of the first steps it takes is you have to know more about your clients, what's going on, than just the scope of your work together. Is that something you find is true?
Oh, Carl, wait. There's so much goodness in what you just said there. You will not believe it, but I would like to really tell the listeners to really replay this because you use the words like bonding, right? We spoke about trust. We spoke about, lurching from point to point. Here's how I look at this. For me, the way to determine whether you're transactional is when you're making fast, logical, low trust decisions. A low trust decision is, would you like a cup of coffee? Would you like a cup of tea? Done. There's nothing that's going to happen there. And this is when you realize that, if you bring in the neuroscience into this, one of the things I always tell people is that if you will know you're operating at low trust when your customers are giving you responses which are very short and abrupt, and that conversation does not carry on. A trust-based methodology is slightly different, Carl. This is where we go back to some of the points you made, right? They tend to be slower. They tend to be very emotional. They tend to focus on relationship. They also dig into, and I'm a Sandler certified coach, right? From a Sandler point of view, we always talk about pain impact. We also talk about the personal impact. And when you can connect the personal impact of this project or this work or this product or this service that you're selling back to that individual, that's how you gain trust. And that requires slowness. It requires a not selling, but a service mindset. And that's very, very difficult for a lot of people to achieve. And for me, I've always said this to people. The best to understand is that when you are transactional, the brain is working in efficiency mode. We got to do X, we're going to do X, and it stops. But when you're in trust-based mode, something else is happening. You're now bonding. And that's one of the reasons why bonding, rapport, these things are considered highly valuable. Not because you play golf together. No, not because you see a golf kit and you say, oh, is that a ping? And the guy says, yeah, do you know your golf? Yes, I know my golf. Well, were you at the Masters? Those are superficial conversations. And today we live in an AI world. I can press a button and AI tells me, oh, this guy likes A, B, C, D, and it customizes my outreach. You will now have to do something very different to earn trust. And that's going to come by coming back to the issue at hand, which is solving problems. Put that pain out, put the man out of his misery, and he will be loyal for life. I know it sounds like we're talking about dogs. We're not. We're talking about human beings that sometimes it's basic, characteristics that you need to address. That's how I would try to wrap it up for you.
Yeah. And there's also that element of you're understanding what the real pain points are, not just what the superficial like dating profile likes and interests are when you're trying to make those connections.
I like that. I like the use of that. You're right. I cringe. Sometimes I sit and, the guys are getting coached or I sit and I'm watching. When I used to be in sales, my boss used to tell me as well. He says, why are you forcing a conversation? You're trying to build a relationship. It doesn't exist. I know you don't play golf. You sound pretty stupid. Rather talk about cricket that you know about. And then I look at him and say, I don't like cricket also. Then he's like even more surprised. So it's one of those things. So you're right. It's superficial is how you quickly reveal yourself. And deep is when you're really talking about, and you're talking at a pace which is actually allowing them to talk more than you are talking. Transactional people tend to talk a lot. And typically the questions are all like yes, no, maybe answers. But when you are in the trust mode, you're actually listening more than you're talking. And you're actually asking open-ended questions. And again, people tell me, but wait a minute, is it that simple? And the answer is yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's actually not rocket science. It's just human to human. And to build trust, you have to be a little bit vulnerable. You also have to raise your hand up and say, I don't understand. Could you explain this to me a bit further?
Yeah, that switch from talking more to listening more and to being interested in them rather than trying to be interesting and wowing them with what your offer is or like what you're trying to sell them or what you're trying to get them to renew on is really the mindset shift. And while it seems simple or too simple on when at first glance, the actual habits that you need to build and the muscles you need to build to do it properly are a lot harder and take a lot longer to build than people realize because they're so used to running a script or just trying to get through the checklist for a meeting or just talking about the superficial stuff and have the same sort of how was your week? Great. Moving on. Like, and think they've actually touched base when really they didn't hear that the great or the fine has some emotional impact or like some underlying emotional, like these things aren't fine. They're just basically, it's a stopgap. But if you actually cared and you ask it and to go a little bit more and politely probed them, you might actually figure out what's really their pain points are. And then you really are connecting because you're showing you actually are going beneath the surface level stuff. And that what they'll tell you after you ask them to tell it to you more is often where you find the real underlying problems and the real meat of the relationship. And then if you can address that, then you're actually moving from that vendor to a trusted relationship sort of dynamic.
But Carl, once again, you have said so much and it's really powerful. I just want to talk about this trust element for just a little bit here, right? Think about money in a bank, right? You earn interest on it. If you want to earn interest from a buyer, right? I'm not playing with words here. You got to have an efficient deposit mechanism, right? So I've always told people, trust is never given. Just remember that. It is earned through repeated proof of intent. You got to do that. And you need to be competent. You cannot earn trust by simply showing proof of intent. Yes, listening and all that. But if you don't deliver ahead of time, you do not keep to your word, then you are going to find yourself in what I call competence deficiency. So you got to keep those two buckets going at the same time. And what's really interesting is you telling someone to trust me just doesn't happen. You need to demonstrate it. You can rely on me is not verbiage. It's actually imputed. It's seen in your behavior. And that's when the fun starts. And to be honest with you, I've noticed one thing. There's another metric I can offer to people. If you're in the trust building mode, you know you're going to shatter that trust if you're talking a solution and features very early in the game. Without understanding, without allowing a person to explain to you what they're looking for, you're asking for trouble. And this is the typical, you walk into a car dealership, the guy says, I see you're in to buy a car. Well, no shit, Sherlock, I'm here, right? It's one of those moments, right? So I always ask people, take this to the next level. And when I went to buy my car, I actually did not go to buy the car. I kid you not, Carl. This guy walked up and he said to me, that's an ugly car, isn't it, sir? And I looked up in surprise because that is what I call a pattern break. And what is interesting about this is that pattern break made me trust this person for some weird reason. So just think about it, because I suddenly realized that he's not selling, he's having a conversation. And when you're having a conversation, that pressure just goes off, because you walked into dealership and all I want to do is just admire the new BMWs. And unfortunately, I had my wife with me and she is a huge skeptic of expensive cars. So she just stood there like a grumpy woman. And you know what he did? He sold to her. Carl, she ended up doing a test drive in a BMW i5. Of all cars, she's so small. That man just did something. And I was just thinking about it and I actually realized that I'm a salesperson and I could relate to what he was doing. He used some very simple techniques, no rocket science. He was very relaxed. His goal was not to sell us a car. His goal was to sell us a dream. He wanted us to feel something, and that's what happened. And we ended up trusting him because we felt that he's not putting any pressure on us. He was very relaxed. In fact, he said to the wife, would you like to be in the back or would you like me to leave him behind? I want you to enjoy the car and not have a passenger shouting at you, screaming at you. And she's like, yeah, leave him behind. He sold to her, sir. He didn't sell to me. And once she said, oh, I like this car, I said, yeah, but I can't afford it. He's like, do you see the switch there? She's disappointed and she hates big cars. But I digress. Back to you, boss.
Yeah, but it shows his approach to the conversation, to building that relationship, didn't come from the sales mindset. It was that pattern break of him start making a joke, putting it at ease, and getting you out of the frequency notions. And then he also looked and read your wife's body language and got a sense for where she was at, and also kind of read the dynamics between the two of you and understood that there could be some play there.
Absolutely.
And so he didn't come in with just a script he was going to run and try and close you. It was more about understanding who you were and then making it fun and seeing what the relationship was like between you two and how his interaction fit into that. And then also what the experience could be that would make it the most fun for you guys. And all of that led to the consideration of getting a car that you would have never would have thought it couldn't really afford.
Absolutely. I would have
Yeah.
been scared to even drive that car back home because knowing she would kill me. And then she's the one egging me on.
Yeah. So that process for it went from him just trying to sell you a car as a vendor to he was trying to understand what would be best for you or what you'd enjoy the most. And is that trusted advisor. And so yeah, even though it was still quote unquote a sales conversation or a client interaction or a prospect interaction, whatever the technical term you have there for in what part of the sales process, the approach was much more relationship driven and left you feeling like you were treated like a human being and you had a fun interaction and the experience was better. And so the next time, if you are in the market for a BMW, you're probably going to think of, oh, we can go talk to this guy again because we weren't ready yet, but we had such a great time and it was so much fun. And he respected us as human beings and was respectful to both of us. And we had a good time. And that's now your go-to. So like you said, with the trusted advisors, a long game. Yeah, he didn't sell you anything that day, but he knows that down the line, if either you or someone else is in the market for him to be a BMW, he's your first call. And if someone else says, hey, we're looking for a BMW, where should we go? You're going to, you got to talk to this guy. He's had a great experience. So he's playing the long game and building that relationship in a way that no other sales guy in that you can think of is going to, especially in the car sales, is going to match.
What's really interesting in this is that there's actually science behind this, and the science is pretty simple. Your brain, when it is faced with a situation like that, drops its guard. When you drop your guard, that's when someone can actually penetrate in. So when someone drops the salesy selling mode, you become comfortable. Now, when you become comfortable, there's one trick I always tell salespeople to look out for. They start sharing. Your buyer will start sharing. And if your buyer is sharing with you and you are convinced and you're listening and you're not making any comment, you're just absorbing, that's when he realizes that this person is safe to deal with. And as the person is safe, he starts opening up more. And if you do not achieve that, you will never get the information because the information will always stay guarded. And that's where the catch is. And I always tell people, when you are doing qualification of a deal also, right, you need to do it in such a way that the individual does not feel that he's under pressure to commit to you. In fact, that's one of the reasons why we talk about equal stature, right? You enter a room and you make it very clear. Whatever happens, you and I may choose to part ways, and I'm okay with that. And that also is a very subtle way to tell people, okay, fine, I get it. This is interesting. Now, can many people pull it off? And that's where I go back to the point you made, which is a very sharp one, scripts. Scripts, my opinion, have been the single biggest reason, Carl, why salespeople actually breach trust very quickly. And here's the funny thing, scripts come from the world of drama. In drama, Carl, if you and I are on stage and I have a script, you also have a script, right? If I bungle up my lines, you know what I did wrong. And you'll tell me, so Deepak, may I ask, where were you on Wednesday and what did you do? Because it was supposed to be telling you what I did on Wednesday, but you realize I flubbed it. So you say, okay, now let's go to a customer. Here you are, Mr. Script. You know, X marks the spot, you stand, but here's a catch. He doesn't have a script. And your customer is going to pick up on your script and he's going to go off script very fast because his mind is reeling now. Where are we going? Why does he seem like he's taking me down a rabbit hole? What's going on? So I've always cautioned people, learn themes, structure around themes, shape shift, absorb the energy from your customer and see where he is at and try to meet him there rather than stay where you are and hope he meets you. That's not going to happen. In the buyer seller dance, we do say it's equals, but at the end of the day, someone has to lead. And if you are trying to lead it, your customer has to feel he's not being led. It's like a Git partnership, right? The man has his hand at, on the back and she dips and he holds her. She trusts him. She knows that he's going to dip at that moment. So that requires experience and it doesn't require a script. And that's the problem with the game.
Yeah. And you can always tell just from a communication standpoint, when someone's reading off a script or they have like a set thing in mind, because if you derail it at all or don't respond the way they expect, and there's this like a fumbling and it just comes across as so awkward and disingenuous. And even if they have the best intentions, you don't get that from them. because you can tell they're running off a predetermined thing and they're not really listening and they're not really engaging in an authentic, genuine way.
Correct. And Carl, if I could just double click on that, right? There's this fun thing that happens with salespeople. So the Sandler guys talk about the pain funnel, right? Ask layer 1 question, then go to layer 2, then layer 3. Kind of we're getting to the root of the problem. I actually had to go for dental surgery. So it's like a diagnosis, right? So the guy says, how long have you had the pain for, right? What have you done before? And I tell him, I stopped eating on this side of the mouth. I'm eating on this side of the mouth. And he's like, okay. Then he started an inspection. Does it hurt here? I'm like, oh, yes. Does it hurt here? Then there's a whole, now I see salespeople doing things as follows. He says, okay, Sandler says I have to go through 6 layers. So they start asking questions. They're not actually getting energy from the customer. The customer is getting exasperated because he doesn't understand why we're getting all these questions, and it becomes mechanical. So do you love human beings? Yes. Do you love all women? You're like, I just said human beings, right? So why are you asking that question? And this is what happens with scripts. This is what happens when you are thinking about your betterment and delivering. So trust is one of those things where you have to actually mirror, watch what's happening, go with the flow. Sometimes you don't achieve your agenda. I get that. And this is why Sandler talks about when you go into any meeting, you are going to make it very clear what this meeting is about. You're going to make it very clear what the outcome needs to be. And then you're going to make sure you have a next step that you can look forward to. And when you have that structure in place, your every action is going to then be focused on making sure that we have a determinable next step. So you don't go all over the place. You focus on listening to make sure the conversation keeps moving forward. That also establishes trust, because hygiene, structure is a good indicator to a buyer that this person actually is first respecting my time, 2, moving the conversation forward and getting to a resolution. And because they have a clear agenda, they also tolerate you asking all the questions, because now he knows the context of why you're asking those questions. That's trust building. And these little things matter a lot. A lot of people don't know that. My ex-boss used to tell me one thing, Carl, which I thought was really incredible. He used to say, if you want your customer to trust you, don't send follow-up emails ever. Just do value add in some form or fashion. And I never understood that. 2, if the customer says, I'll see you at 8 o'clock, be there at 7:55. He said, these some simple things, if you do, you'll surprise the customer. And 2, when the customer says, I need this from your company, make sure it happens. Because when he sees the power you have within the organization to get people to respond to his needs, that also builds trust that this person will fight in his organization for me. It's what we call a virtuous cycle, Carl.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Deepak. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you want to connect with myself or Deepak some more, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.